I would like to talk about the fact that there are rituals done at the military bases also, and that rituals are not a cover. The people that do the mind control are involved.
When I bring naval intelligence up, the reason why I'm bringing that up is because Arizona Wilder, she actually came out a long time ago and talked about how they were doing these satanic rituals on military bases. They showed their credentials. They were part of the Defense Intelligence Agency, part of the Pentagon, DOJ, all that. They were high-ranking officials. And they approached Ray Boucher not only because he was a pastor, but because he also worked for MUFON. And they were highly disturbed that a lot of the stuff that they were seeing were these rituals, satanic rituals were being carried out. Not only satanic rituals, but even human sacrifices. We're going to get into a whole lot of different categories today, but I promise you it's all going to come full circle, and we're going to tie this all together. There's an area called Area 2 that a lot of people are not very familiar with, but what makes this place special? Well, one of the things that they do there is they house nuclear weapons. And at Area 2, they actually have UFO craft that show up quite frequently. And that's interesting enough, but what's even more interesting is that they have had reports of shadow people showing up out there. And these aren't just, like normal shadow people about the same size as you, but these are like 7-8 feet tall. And they talk about them actively running around on military bases.
On the outskirts of Las Vegas, an obscure part of the Nellis Air Force Base range, designated Area 2, has for decades been a reputed repository for nuclear warheads. As many as 200 nukes are said to be stored in Area 2's bunkers. 3 layers of heavily armed Air Force security teams patrol the area 24/7, watching for any attempted intrusions.
So on 2 occasions, we had an alert that was called where there was unidentified flying object over Area 2.
This former security officer says intrusions didn't only happen in the sky. There were multiple incidents of bizarre shadow people seen in and around Area 2, including one dramatic incident from 1991 when security teams were on high alert.
This person was never found, but the airman that had seen this person described them as being really tall, like 7 foot, and like I said, moving very fast. It was very strange.
So when I got there, I was straight security.
Another Area 2 security officer, Chris Cabrera, heard the stories of shadow people, but didn't know if they were real until he had his own encounter.
And when I turned around, there was this black mass form. I don't know what you would call it. It looked like I don't even know how to describe it. Like it looked like a person, but it didn't have definitive shape of a head.
Like vague, like a mist or something?
No mist. It was black. It was like a dark blob.
When I bring naval intelligence up, the reason why I'm bringing that up is because Arizona Wilder, she actually came out a long time ago and talked about how they were doing these satanic rituals on military bases.
There was programming bases. They use military bases because they won't have any interference when they have someone on a military base. And a lot of my programming took place on military bases. I would like to talk about the fact that there are rituals done at the military bases also, and that rituals are not a cover. The people that do the mind control are involved, and rituals are very much a part of how they do things. For example, naval intelligence members or people that are in naval intelligence are usually very involved with Ordo Templi Orientis. And that doesn't mean that everyone in naval intelligence is involved in that. But naval intelligence is responsible for a lot of overseeing of ritual activity in this country.
And one of the things that she said was not only doing these satanic rituals, but, you know, that naval intelligence is heavily involved with the OTO, the Ordo Templi Orientis. So you got the Ordo Templi Orientis mixed up, which, you know, if you know anything about OTO, that's, you know, Crowley and Jack Parsons and Hubbard. And, you know, why is that important? Well, that's important because what they were doing, the whole Babylon working ritual, I'm not even going to dive into all that, but, you know, if you know anything about the Babylon working ritual, this was an actual ritual that Crowley had performed years previously called the Amalantra working. Parsons took it, tweaked it, and came up with the Babylon working ritual, where they were trying to bring about the Whore of Babylon and to cause the end of the world to come upon us. Don't necessarily think he's done anything like that, but did he start something? Did he get a clock ticking? I don't know. Can't say.
A man who's considered to be the greatest occultist who ever lived. His name was Aleister Crowley. Many people will know the name, but not much about the man. He graduated from Cambridge with a biological engineering degree. He worked as a part-time agent for British intelligence, and he developed the famous V symbol for victory used by Winston Churchill during World War II against the Nazi occult symbol of the swastika. Aleister Crowley became, even today, the most influential occultist who ever lived. He attracted the attention of a man named Jack Parsons. Jack Parsons is the father of modern day rocketry. Jack Parsons is a very interesting and enigmatic figure who never had any formal training, yet was the guy who developed all of our early rocket technology, and especially the fuel, which is still in use today. Jack Parsons became very enamored with Aleister Crowley and became one of his top students, if not his most ardent pupil. Here are a few of the examples of what rocketry was doing then, and Parsons' participation and key participation in all of this early rocketry engineering is something widely known and accepted today, because that led to this. And all of this leads us back to Aleister Crowley and his perhaps most adept pupil, Jack Parsons, the father of modern day rocketry. So our tale begins roughly in 1940, early 1940s. It was at that time that Jack Parsons made contact with Aleister Crowley in interest of his occult teachings and studies. Crowley is known to have used a very scientific method for his occult research, and that probably attracted Jack Parsons to him. Parsons became extremely well educated and adept in Crowley's magical system. This would lead Jack Parsons down a very interesting path. So Jack Parsons actually became very well acquainted with certain other occult members, and was known for writing philosophical books. One of them, known as Freedom is a Double-Edged Sword, is widely considered to be still the greatest libertarian writing of all time. Jack Parsons took Aleister Crowley's early examples of his magical workings. These were known as the Alamantra workings. It was at this time that Aleister Crowley made contact with what he described as being a non-human intelligence. It was around this time that another famous individual named L. Ron Hubbard made contact with Jack Parsons. And L. Ron Hubbard became very interested in Crowley's system of magical practice that Jack Parsons was also practicing. And together they began to design a series of rituals based on Crowley's famous rituals. Crowley's rituals were known as the Alamantra workings, in which he channeled a non-human intelligence that he called Lamb. Here are pictures of L. Ron Hubbard from the period. Going to pull up a picture here of the three together, because it was the combination of these three that led to what we see today as far as a profound amount of paranormal activity. So there are the three men together. And the picture coming up is a picture of the entity that Crowley channeled during the Alamantra workings, and an example of what they call Enochian script, or the secret angelic language in certain occult groups. It was through a use of these symbols and ritual, ceremonial magic, that he was able to make contact with this entity that he called Lamb. And Lamb dictated to him what is known now as Liber Val Legis, or the Book of the Law. It is Crowley's crowning achievement. It is a completely new way of thinking about spirituality and religion. It is very interesting that Lamb looks exactly like our pop culture gray aliens. Lamb is such an early rendition of this exact archetype that we are led to believe that it was one of these creatures, in fact, that Crowley was able to contact. Here are photographs of what one of these creatures look like. Other than the oblong almond-shaped eyes, which we know from abductee testimony are actual lenses that cover the real eyes, they look exactly like Crowley's depictions of Lamb. Those came from circa 1945, 43 to 45. So it's interesting that Crowley channeled something that today is widely reported all over the world and has since 1947. Crowley's interest in channeling of Lamb led Jack Parsons and L. Ron Hubbard to conduct what they called the Babylon workings. This was designed in order to bring about what they called a moon child, a non-human intelligence that would bring about an evolution of human consciousness. They conducted these rituals with a famous actress and artist and model named Marjorie Cameron. Jack Parsons and L. Ron Hubbard conducted an initial ritual in order to bring about or attract to them what they considered to be the incarnation of Babylon the whore, or basically the spirit of Babylonia. And Parsons believed that when Cameron showed up, that she was this embodiment, and he might, with her, be able to accomplish his main goal of birthing what he called a moon child into the real world, which would then change the paradigm of human belief systems worldwide. These rituals were conducted, and apparently not very long after that, we have the very first widely reported UFO incident in 1947 in Roswell, New Mexico. There were other reports prior to Roswell, but none of them were known to have been a major crash retrieval like the one reported at Roswell. So as these men were conducting this ritual, it is believed that they tore a hole or rip in the electromagnetic membrane that separates dimensions and allowed for interdimensional activity. This interdimensional activity resulted in the crash of Roswell in 1947, according to certain accounts of occultists and other researchers into these matters. Now, L. Ron Hubbard would go on to found, of course, the cult of Scientology, and he did so largely based on Crowley's teachings. Marjorie Cameron ends up leaving with L. Ron Hubbard and most of Jack Parsons' money, and together they went off, and the rest is history as far as Scientology goes. On July 8th of 1947, we have a report of the Roswell crash appearing on the front page. This was before the Army recanted the story. Everyone is well acquainted with that. Strangely enough, on July 8th of 1947, a document was generated by the FBI, and this document was generated in response to not only the Roswell incident, but to incidents that were happening prior to Roswell, and which they believed were caused by the Babylon workings of Jack Parsons and L. Ron Hubbard. Part of their report, which is on the screen, says that these creatures are from the astral plane. And they call them interdimensional. The astral plane is an occult terminology to describe interdimensional activity. And in the FBI report, they claim that these creatures actually came from another dimension. They claim that they do not have a planet as such, but exist on an ethereal planet, which is somehow tied to our planet in another dimension. Many ufologists believe that it was the detonation of nuclear weapons that led to the UFO flap that began in 1947 and continues to this day. However, the FBI believed that something about the Babylon workings and their timing had something to do with what they were seeing on the ground. So it's interesting that these three occultists, accompanied by a Hollywood actress, were perhaps responsible for opening a portal in space and time and allowing a non-human alien intelligence into our dimension, our space and time.
But we do know that the UFO wave kicked off after what they did. In fact, Kenneth Grant, who took over the Thelema after Aleister Crowley died, he boasted and bragged that it was a member of the OTO that had caused the great UFO flap of 1947. Actively bragged about it numerous times. So when you look at that and who these people are and what they're saying, I mean, you have to take it with a grain of salt, but at the same time, you can't just completely dismiss it. And in fact, after they investigated Jack Parsons, he worked for Howard Hughes for a while, and he took classified documents, top secret documents, without permission, which launched an investigation into him. And when they recovered the documents, started looking into him, come to find out that he was, part of this Thelema, was mixed up with Aleister Crowley, and Charles Taze Russell was the one who started the Jehovah's Witnesses. And he set a specific date that would start the end of the world. And when you look at that date, and when you look at when Jack Parsons was born, it's the same date. And so, the more that they dug into Jack Parsons, the more disturbed they became. But it wasn't just Parsons, it was even Hubbard. And so this is where we're going to get into what Hubbard, him and Scientology a lot of people think this is like some cuckoo cult nonsense, but it's actually far more than that. Keep in mind who he worked with. He was part of Parsons. He was part of Aleister Crowley. He was part of Thelema. And so he is a Satanist. This guy was a Satanist and a black magician, performed ninth degree sex magic. You don't just do stuff like that. You just decide, I think I'm going to do ninth degree sex magic today. That's something that you've been actively engaged in for a while. And like I said, it goes pretty dark, pretty deep. Here's the other thing that a lot of people don't really understand is that the Scientologists believe that they are going to be like superhuman, that they will become gods. So yeah, this is very, very interesting. All right, so in our film Higher Entities, The Lost Tapes, we actually got into or we actually met up with a pastor by the name of Ray Boucher. Ray Boucher was the one who actually met with the individuals, which a lot of people nowadays know as the Collins Elite. That wasn't an actual term that they refer to themselves. It was actually people in the Pentagon that gave them that name, people that Lou Elizondo and some of them have actually dealt with. But Ray Boucher just knew that they showed their credentials. They were part of the Defense Intelligence Agency, part of the Pentagon, DOJ, all that. They were high-ranking officials, and they approached Ray Boucher not only because he was a pastor, but because he also worked for MUFON. And they were highly disturbed that a lot of the stuff that they were seeing were these rituals. Satanic rituals were being carried out. Not only satanic rituals, but even human sacrifices.
You were pretty heavily involved in the UFO community. Was it in the 90s?
Yeah, my greatest involvement was from the late 70s through the late 90s.
And what were you doing exactly? What was your mission?
It was an intellectual quest for me. Essentially, I was fascinated by the whole topic. I worked with NICAP early on. I had got a lot of contact with APRO, the Aerial Phenomena Research Organization, and I ended up as a state section director and then a state director for MUFON for Nebraska. Worked with Citizens Against UFO Secrecy. I was on their board for a while. Just a number of various organizations that helped me to satisfy my own intellectual curiosity.
Now, when we think about this alleged group, the Collins Elite, I was under the impression from what I've heard, and again, this is why we're meeting, because I need to be able to separate the rumors from what actually took place.
Sure.
You were contacted by members of the Department of Defense.
Correct.
Can you walk me through what exactly took place, what you were told?
I was contacted by phone. The gentleman wanted to meet with me. He and a colleague said they wanted to meet with me. We arranged a time, met actually not far from here at another hotel here in Lincoln. They explained to me what was going on, the project with which they were involved, and their concerns that it was not only unethical and immoral, but that it was a program that was really connected with the demonic, with satanic forces. They described research into psychic phenomena, psychotronic weapons, the attempted perfection of an ability to kill people at a distance psychically with only the power of the mind. Numbers of things like that. They also mentioned the fact that some aspects of this had slipped into much the same thing as satanic worship in a way to connect, to contact what they refer to as NHEs, non-human entities, They didn't refer to them as aliens because they were certainly aware that these were, although they could manifest in a physical form, they were not, in the common sense, what we would think of as extraterrestrial. They would fall more into what John Keel termed ultra-terrestrials from some other dimension. And I would argue it's a spiritual dimension.
They were summoning these things into our reality. So again, this is, we're going to get into the whole thing about summoning here very shortly. But yeah, they are summoning these things into our reality. Now, what are they getting out of it? They're obviously getting something out of it, or they wouldn't be doing it.